Hi everyone, I'm here with Patrick Lahey from Triton Submarines. Patrick, it's great to have you with us. Let's start with your background. How did you get involved in all of this?
Okay, well, I got involved in the underwater business when I was about 18. I went to a commercial diving school in Los Angeles, California, and the idea being that I wanted to become a diver that worked on the oil rigs. I went through that school. I became an air mixed gas saturation diver and worked for a number of different commercial diving companies. The one I worked for in Santa Barbara, California, International Underwater Contractors, I think it was in about 1982 or 83, I think it was. They had a number of small submersibles, and as a diver, one of the things, of course, you become keenly aware of is that anytime you spend time underwater at any sort of depth, there's a correspondingly larger period you have to spend in decompression. What I found fascinating about the subs was that you could get in one of these submersibles, go down hundreds or thousands of feet, spend as much time as you needed to get a particular job done, and then you could come straight back up and get out. I thought that was incredibly liberating. Of course, you're inside of a structure, but the fact that you could go down, see these incredible things, do whatever job needed to be done, and then come right back out, fascinated me. And from that point onward, I really kind of focused my entire career on the submersibles, because I thought they were incredible, these inner spaceships. And I continued to work with them in the offshore oil and gas industry until they basically vanished in the mid-'80s, and then worked with a company that had taken some of the ex-oil and gas subs and was operating them down in the Cayman Islands for tourism. And that was fascinating to me, because we were taking people who had never been underwater, or in many cases who had dived, but to only scuba depths. We were taking them down to 800 feet or 1,000 feet to see a shipwreck. And people just loved it, and it was a great application for an old technology. Following that, I went to work for a tourist submarine manufacturer, a Canadian company called Lahey Submarines. I worked for them for about 8 years, building big sort of Greyhound buses that go underwater. They don't dive deep, but to about 50 meters, 150, 165 feet, and they carry large numbers of people, maybe half a dozen to a dozen times a day. And I learned really a lot about manufacturing from them. I learned a lot about quality and documentation, and it's where I became interested in the idea of someday maybe building a sub myself.
And you ended up doing that?
Yeah. So flash forward to, I think it was 1993, and I met up with my business partner, Bruce Jones. At the time, he was starting a company called Yacht Submarines that I was a part of. And one of the things that we started to look at that time was the idea of a submersible on a yacht. Now, at that time, there was no appetite for it. It was still too soon. I think we introduced the idea at trade shows and boat shows. One of the things I remember quite vividly was how people were very dismissive of it. They would just sort of walk by the booth and sort of chuckle under their breath, saying, look at this crazy person who wants to put a submarine on a yacht. But again, flash forward another 10 years, actually more like 12 years, to 2005, 2006, and we took one of the designs we had developed in the early days, which was called the Triton 650, and we built a 1,000-foot version of that vehicle for a client who took a chance on us, who looked at some sketches and some renderings and said, I kind of like this idea, it's kind of cool. And so he believed enough in it that he was willing to take that leap, and that's really a person who I have a great debt of gratitude toward, because if it hadn't been for him and his vision that he could do this, this would have never got started. So in 2007, we started Triton Submarines, and we started to focus entirely on this notion of manned submersibles on yachts. And that's where we're at today. We are building submersibles principally for yacht owners. As it happens, those submersibles, while being designed for recreational use and general entertainment, are now also being used for marine science research, exploration, filmmaking, salvage, because they're quite versatile and they can be adapted to do just about anything underwater.
What are some of the experiences that you've had that stand out as pretty special in the exploration you've done and the many records that you hold?
Well, I think we've been very lucky as a company, and I think principally because we're one of the pioneers to this industry. We're delivering these vehicles onto yachts that travel around the world, and as such, we've had an opportunity to do some world firsts, not necessarily me personally, but the company. For example, in 2012, one of our subs was used to film the giant squid, and that was an exciting moment for us as a company. This was a very elusive deep water animal that virtually any scientist in the world, would have given their eye teeth to see, to catch a glimpse of it. We were able to capture 22 minutes in high definition of that animal from about 680 meters, about 2,000 feet, down to 930 meters, over 3,000 feet. And that 22 minutes was memorialized in a documentary by the Discovery Channel that was called, an NHK, which was called The Giant Squid, The Monster is Real or something. And so it was a great moment for us to see our equipment actually being used to do something so momentous. And so it was really a proud moment for us. We also did another documentary in Sagami Bay in Japan in conjunction with NHK that was memorialized in a documentary about deep water sharks, where we filmed the goblin shark and the six-gill shark. And again, that was a great opportunity for us. And I think it was just because we were lucky to be on a vessel that's owned by a gentleman who is passionately interested in the ocean and ocean exploration. And he's made his yacht, expedition yacht, and submersibles available to scientists and filmmakers because he believes strongly in the notion that we need to further our knowledge and understanding of the ocean. And these vehicles are a great mechanism, a great platform for doing precisely that. And then another great opportunity was in 2011, 2012. We did the very first ever manned submersible dives in Antarctica. Now, when I first dove out there, I didn't realize that people had never dived subs there. I mean, people have dived there, of course, and military submarines have certainly driven past and all that sort of stuff. But manned submersibles like this, which are used principally for observation, had never been dived there. So we had a couple of Chinese families wealthy Hong Kong Chinese families who chartered a vessel. We put a couple of submersibles on it and a couple of helicopters and all kinds of other equipment. We went down to Antarctica and we did the very first manned submersible dives in Antarctica. I mean, and if you think about that for just a moment, I find that to be interesting for a number of reasons. One is that it's the 5th largest continent on our planet, and yet we've never even had a submersible there. So it means that any of the water depth beyond 50 meters has never really been explored, never really been seen. I suppose it really shouldn't be too surprising because more than 95% of the ocean remains unexplored. And I'd like to see that changed. I'd like to see a greater focus put on ocean exploration because I think it's critical to our ongoing survival as a species. I mean, that may sound a bit dramatic, probably is, but I do feel that the ocean's health and well-being is tied directly to our own health and well-being.
Do you feel that private exploration has a role to play in the future of exploring the environment in general, whether it's the oceans or
It does. In fact, it's a very good question because one of the things that's become abundantly clear over the last few years is that government-funded marine science research is all but vanished. Certainly in the United States it has. In places like Japan, they still make it a priority. They still have a lot of government-funded marine science research and ocean exploration. But here in the US, we don't anymore. Those budgets keep shrinking. And the fact is that it's clients like ours who purchase submersibles like this who I think hold the key to giving marine scientists and ocean explorers and filmmakers a platform to be able to go into the ocean and see and experience the deep ocean with our own senses. There's lots of companies using ROVs, remotely operated vehicles, which are certainly one tool and a very capable tool. AUVs, another tool. But there's something quite unique about being in the equipment and seeing things and experiencing things with your own eyes and with your own senses. It's quite a different thing than looking at a picture or a video image of something from an ROV or an AUV.
Outstanding.
Yeah.
Okay, so Patrick, can you tell us a little bit about what we're seeing here?
Sure, absolutely. So the piece of acrylic that you see here is actually the pressure boundary of a Triton 3303. That's a submersible that dives to 3,300 feet, or 1,000 meters, and carries 3 people. The pilot sits in the back, and 2 passengers who sit on either side. And the submarine, the acrylic sphere, the pressure boundary that you see here, nestles into a framework that has ballast tanks and hatches and all sorts of other equipment, lights and manipulators and thrusters. But the piece that you see here is unique. First and foremost, it's the largest acrylic sphere that's ever been built for a manned sub. 2.1 meters in diameter, which is 7 feet 84 inches in diameter, and it's 167 millimeters thick, which is 6.5 inches thick. They use more than 3 tons of acrylic plastic to produce the sphere, and really what's unique about it is it's been manufactured in an entirely unique way. This is a pioneering methodology for acrylic fabrication. The old style of producing acrylic was where they put powdered acrylic into a mold and melted it, vacuumed it down. These guys actually polymerize huge sheets of acrylic, and the experts are behind me here. Wolfgang Stuber of Yacht Industries and Heinz Fritz of Heinz Fritz. Those 2 companies together manufactured the sphere. Yacht produced the raw material in the form of these big sheets where they cut out discs, and then they thermally form them into rough hemispheres, and then Heinz Fritz machines them, polishes them, cuts the apertures into them, bonds them, anneals them, and then delivers them to us like this.
How do you get the components inside?
Very good question. We actually have a jig in our facility where we fabricate all of the interior on a frame and test everything, and then it's all disassembled, sort of thrown down the hatch, and then a guy pulls a big string, and no, I'm just kidding. And then you sort of throw everything down through the hatch and you reassemble it again inside. So it's a time-consuming process, but being able to build it on this framework, on this template that we've built, means that it's a fairly simple process to disconnect it, put it all down the hatch, and then reassemble it inside.
Okay, how long does it take to build one of these submarines?
Well, from the time we get an order, it's roughly 10 to 12 months before we can actually deliver the submersible. And the acrylic, which used to be the longest lead time item of all, is received in about 6 months from the time we ordered it. So it's a long process, and it's a difficult process, but it's one that the vendors we use, Yacht Industries and Heinz Fritz, make look easy, but it's not easy. A piece of acrylic or even a glass, and you submerge it in a sink of water, one of the things you'll notice is it appears to disappear. You can see that you know you're holding something in your hand, but you can't tell where the water ends and the glass or the acrylic that's in your hand begins and ends. And what's fascinating about a sub like this is when you're sitting in it and you submerge, the pressure hull vanishes, or seems to vanish, because you can't tell when you're sitting inside where the acrylic ends and where the water begins. You know it's there, and I find it interesting. Anytime I take a person into an acrylic hull submarine, as soon as you submerge, one of the first things they do is they lean back because they suddenly feel vulnerable because there's nothing there anymore. And then the other thing they do is they reach out and they touch the acrylic. It's funny, almost everybody does it. They first lean back because that's your sort of natural reaction to, ooh, and then they reach forward to make sure that acrylic is still there. And so it is truly an immersive experience. I mean, you are immersed in the environment in a way that isn't possible with traditional submersibles, that have metallic pressure boundaries and little viewports. They're great vehicles, but it's a different experience completely. Looking through a window like that, sort of like peeking through the crack of a door, isn't the same thing as sort of standing in the center of a forest and sort of looking around you. And that's the magic of an acrylic hull or a transparent manned submersible. So anyway,
cool. Thank you.
You're welcome. So the sub that you see, or the model that you see in front of you, is a model of the Triton 3303. So that's the submersible that this acrylic sphere would be fit into. And here you see the acrylic sphere nestled into its framework with the main ballast tanks located on either side. That's the yellow structure. And these main ballast tanks are what gives the submarine its freeboard and stability on the surface. When the submarine is on the surface, there's 4 tanks, if you will, one here, and a corresponding pair on the other side that give the submarine about 3,000 kilograms of positive buoyancy. That buoys the submarine up to such an extent that it floats in the water right about here. That's the water line. So we can load and unload passengers safely and easily into and out of the submersible because we've got a nice stable and dry platform for them to get into and out of the submersible. They climb in through this entrance hatch, which is 22 inches in diameter, the opening, 550 millimeters. They step down into the interior, and as I say, you've got a passenger on either side and a pilot that sits back in the center with the pilot's console in front of him, with the electronics on one side, with all of the gas systems, the fluid systems that are for life support on the other side. The submarine has an air conditioning compartment, so it's very peaceful, quiet, and comfortable. There's music, if you want to listen to music. Or we actually have hydrophones, so you can turn hydrophones on and you can listen to the ambient sounds of the ocean, whales and fish. And it's amazing the things that you hear using these hydrophones. We have one located up top and one at the bottom. We have a communication system that allows us to communicate through the water to the surface. This is an untethered submersible, so it dives to those sort of depths without trailing anything behind it. And the way we communicate is through acoustics, through sound waves that travel through the ocean and will emanate from here and be received through here to the communication system inside the vehicle. There's a manipulator arm on the front of the sub, so you can pick things up with it. Lights, so you can illuminate, because once you get down to about 1,200 feet, about 350 meters, you'll find that it's completely dark. And as you get deeper, there's absolutely no light whatsoever. And so these lights bring back light at a color temperature very similar to sunlight. Today we use LED lights. They're incredible. They produce a tremendous amount of light energy with very limited power. So the lights, each one produces over 20,000 lumens with only about a 2.5 amp draw on our 288 volt system. Also located on the vehicle, you can see there's a framework, which is what holds the sphere into the frame. There's a battery pod located underneath. Those batteries sit in stainless steel trays. Those trays are connected to a hydraulic cylinder that can be moved forward or backward to change the pitch angle of the vehicle. So you can make the submarine point up or point down. What's really nice about that is once the submarine is neutrally buoyant, which is the condition that we operate in, the submarine's very efficient like that. You can tilt it and drive up a slope or tilt it down and drive down a slope. You can also, if you're looking at a vertical surface, you can change the people's perspective by allowing them to look up or look down by just moving the batteries backward and forward. So when the submarine gets ready to dive, we open the main ballast tank vent valves. The submarine will submerge, and then at the back of the vehicle, located in the center, directly aft of the pilot, is a variable ballast tank that holds 45 gallons or about 180 liters of water. By adjusting the amount of water in that tank, you can make the submarine either negatively buoyant, neutrally buoyant, or positively buoyant. And the nice thing about that is because it's a rigid container, as you make excursions in the water column, it doesn't change the buoyancy condition of the vehicle. So you remain in a neutrally buoyant condition, which is when the sub is most efficient. There's 4 thrusters, 2 located aft and 2 located here amidships. The 2 located here are what we call the vertical translational thrusters that allows the submarine to go vertically through the water column, but also if they're used in opposition, you can translate port to starboard. The thrusters at the back here are set up in such a way that you can go forward and backward, but you can also spin the vehicle on its own axis. These subs are, as I said, designed and engineered and built specifically for use on private yachts, but they also have the versatility to be used for many other things. And we're happy to say that our subs have been used in documentary filmmaking, in pioneering marine science research and ocean exploration, and even on some salvage projects.
Well, thank you very much. Really appreciate the interview. Thank you for watching. This has been Armin Ellis with Patrick Lahey from Triton Submarines. Triton Submarines, I beg your pardon.
Thank you very much.